The Boston Bruins are going to honor goaltender Tuukka Rask prior to tonight's game against the New Jersey Devils. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
Your Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. Today is Thursday, March 31st, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. This month has been the biggest download month in the history of the podcast, and I'm just so grateful for those of you who have subscribed, who download, listen on a regular basis. It really does mean a lot. Now, the podcast is free and available on all podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube. If you haven't hit subscribed on either of those platforms, please do so right now. It's going to be a great April as the Bruins gear up for the Stanley Cup playoffs. If you're on social media, you can find the podcast at Locked NHL Bruins on both Instagram and Twitter. And you can find me, my dad jokes, hockey tweets at Ian C. McLaren. Now, I am a lifelong Bruins fan. I've been covering this team for various outlets for about 17 years. And let me tell you, I've seen a lot of goalies come and go over my time as a Boston Bruins fan. None as impactful or as good as Tuukka Rask, with the exception, of course, of Tim Thomas. Like, if I go back to when I was a kid watching this team, names like Bill Ranford, Reggie Lemelin, Andy Moog come to mind, of course. They tried to make Blaine Locker a thing. You had Jim Carey. Byron Dafoe was a mainstay there for a while. You had names like John Graham, Kay Whitmore, Peter Skudra, until Andrew Raycroft came along. He showed some great promise as a Calder Trophy winner. Jeff Hackett, Steve Shields, Felix Potvin made appearances until Tim Thomas arrived. And obviously, we all know what he was able to accomplish in his 8-9 years in and out of the Boston Bruins lineup, and then finally cementing his spot in Bruins lore by winning a Stanley Cup for the Boston Bruins in 2011. But in the year 2008, a young Finnish goaltender named Tuukka Rask came on the scene. He had been acquired from the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for Raycroft, who had won that Calder Trophy. And he went on to become the winningest goalie in Boston Bruins history. And I don't think we really appreciate how good he was for so long. 15 years with the Boston Bruins, 564 regular season appearances, 308 wins, which is a franchise record. Tiny Thompson, back in the 30s, had the previous record, 252. Yes, he's second also in losses, but that just speaks to his longevity. But he was excellent in his time with the Bruins as well. He has a career save percentage of .921, highest among any goalies in Bruins history, over 100 starts, tied actually with Tim Thomas, but in almost 200 more career appearances than Tim Thomas. We all know that he was not on the ice or the goalie of record when the Bruins won the Stanley Cup in 2011. He did, of course, lead the Bruins to Eastern Conference championships in both 2013 and 2019. And because the Bruins were not able to get it done in those years, he's often maligned or, I don't want to say disregarded, but disrespected for not being able to win. But the reality is, if he had not played so well up to those finals, the Bruins wouldn't be there in the first place. 2013, he went 14-8 in the postseason with a 940 save percentage. In 2019, he went 15-9 with a 934 save percentage. Those are otherworldly numbers for a goaltender in a high pressure situation like the Stanley Cup playoffs. And he deserves so much credit for helping the Bruins get to that point. In 2011, Tim Thomas, a 940 save percentage over the course of the postseason for the Bruins, 16-9, and he won the Conn Smythe Trophy. If Boston had been able to win in 2019, there is no question in my mind that Tuukka Rask would have been the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. His save percentage in 2013 was identical to that of Tim Thomas when he won. I would have given it that year to David Krejci. He was just on another level when it comes to playoff scoring. And they gave up the 2 goals in 17 seconds. Just complete breakdowns there. Not Tuukka Rask's fault. In 2019, the whole team failed to show up. And Jordan Binnington made some key saves in the first period. The Bruins had a couple chances early on. And they really, they play that game 100 times. They probably win it 95 times, 99 times. It wasn't because of Tuukka Rask that they lost those 2 games solely on Tuukka Rask. Now, if you go back to 2008 when he entered the league, you look at all goaltenders who have played 400 games over the last 15 years. Tuukka Rask leads the pack in terms of save percentage, 921. Ben Bishop matching that level as well. He only played 397 starts. Rask made 541 starts. So he's right up there with some of the best goalies of his generation. Marc-Andre Fleury, Pekka Rinne, Henrik Lundqvist, Jonathan Quick, Carey Price, Sergei Bobrovsky have more career wins. But Tuukka Rask is up there when it comes to the best of the best in save percentage. If you look at goalies who have played in the postseason, only 3 goalies have made more than 100 starts in the postseason since 2008. Tuukka Rask leads the way with a 925 save percentage. Henrik Lundqvist at 924. Marc-Andre Fleury at 910, although he has many more wins and a couple cups or 3 cups to go with it there. So by any measure, Tuukka Rask was not only the greatest goalie in Boston Bruins history, but he's been one of the very best of his generation over the past 15 years. He tried to make a comeback here this year after undergoing hip surgery. He, went 2-2 in 4 games, had to call it a career because of just lingering issues from that hip injury. We talk about how perhaps Bruce Cassidy should have gone with Jeremy Swayman in the playoffs last year because Rask was dealing with this. He still had a 919 save percentage in the postseason. And, for my money, you can talk about him not showing up in big games. You can talk about him leaving the playoff bubble in whatever year it was, 2020. I will never hold that against him. Prioritizing his family, always the right decision. And for 15 years, he showed up. He stopped the puck with more regularity than almost anybody else at his position. And his number 40 definitely belongs in the rafters for the Boston Bruins at some point. For tonight, they're going to honor him prior to the game. I know a lot of us will be watching, tuning in, maybe tearing up. And all due respect to Tuukka Rask. And I hope that the TD Garden crowd just goes wild for Rask before puck drop here tonight. Before we look at tonight's game, a quick word about BetOnline. After months of playing, college basketball has determined the top teams for the Final Four and will determine this year's national champion this coming week. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info, from all the latest odds, contests, and player props, you name it. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your latest sports developments, including podcasts and reviews for all the leagues this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today, use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. Free and available on all podcast platforms. And you can now check out the Locked On Now podcast, which is a daily recap of all the previous night's action from our local hosts. Now, the Bruins are in action tonight against the New Jersey Devils after losing 6-4 to the rival Toronto Maple Leafs on Tuesday. Bruce Cassidy set to make some changes to the lineup, and it looks as though Mike Reilly and Josh Brown will be inserted into the lineup in lieu of Derek Forbort and Connor Clifton. I think Forbort has played pretty well as of late. Clifton, I'm kind of eager to get him out and get a bird's eye view for a couple games, see what Josh Brown can do. I tweeted yesterday that Brown and Reilly played limited time together, 5-on-5 for the Ottawa Senators last season. They were on the ice for 0 goals for, 4 goals against, and they were out attempted and outshot as well. Now, of course, they weren't playing on a team as good as the current Boston Bruins. Didn't get the support from up front. And I'm interested to see what we know what Reilly can do and what Forbort can bring to the table. Linus Ullmark will get the start in net after Jeremy Swayman, kind of struggled in the last game against the Maple Leafs. Bruce Cassidy said that while he felt the Bruins were outplayed by the Maple Leafs on Tuesday, he did watch the game back, and he felt the game was a bit more even on rewatch than it appeared in real time. He said he has always felt at home you want to try to push the pace early, put teams on their heels. Bruins did not do that necessarily, but it was more of an even game than he had thought. There were some key giveaways, misplays with the puck that made it look a bit more lopsided. And with Toronto's offensive talent, they will make you pay if you make those mistakes. But for the most part, it was a pretty evenly played game in his estimation, and the numbers support that as well. It wasn't a huge shot differential, a huge shot attempt differential, um, and so the Bruins will look tonight to get back on track against the New Jersey Devils, who are down in the standings, but they should not be taken lightly. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but Jack Hughes has emerged as a budding superstar for the Devils this season. He can hurt you on any given shift. Nico Hischier has been playing pretty well. They do have some offensive weapons. They do have issues on the back end goaltending that have kept them down this season. But if they can acquire a bona fide goalie this offseason, they could be a real threat in the Metropolitan Division as early as next season, especially if Hughes continues on this trajectory. So yeah, doesn't appear as though there will be any changes up front for the Boston Bruins tonight, and we could very well see the pairing of Reilly and Josh Brown. I think he's doing that just because Forbort Clifton, they've been playing together. Reilly, Brown have been practicing together. And so it makes sense to insert the pairing since they have been working together so closely in practice. Reilly last played on March 21st versus Montreal. Brown hasn't played since March 19th with the Senators, so they want to get these guys into some game action, keep them fresh. There's going to be injuries that pop up, and you don't want guys who have been sitting out on the sidelines for weeks on end without getting in any game action. Touch quickly on the Taylor Hall, Ilya Lyubushkin fallout here in a moment, but I do want to recommend highly the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast. Hosts Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone help you become the expert of your fantasy league, free and available wherever you get podcasts. Thank you again for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. Tomorrow we will recap tonight's game, take a look at the week ahead, maybe update the Atlantic Division power rankings. Now go make Locked On Fantasy Hockey your second listen. So there was a lot of discussion yesterday about Taylor Hall, whether he would be suspended for seemingly sucker punching Ilya Lyubushkin, definitely hitting him with his glove on the side of the face after Lyubushkin had driven Hall into the boards head first. It wasn't necessarily from behind, but a very dangerous looking hit all the same. Taylor Hall was fined $5,000, the maximum allowable under the CBA, by the NHL for roughing Lyubushkin on Tuesday night. A lot of people pointed to the sucker punch rule, saying it warrants a match penalty, automatic suspension if it's injurious, and if Lyubushkin was unwilling and unsuspecting. You could argue whether he was unsuspecting after taking that hit. Yes, it did come from behind. But in today's NHL, a hit like that usually, warrants some sort of response. So I don't know if unsuspecting can be attributed there. He did leave the game for precautionary reasons, and he was the first Toronto Maple Leaf on the ice here this morning for practice. So it doesn't look like he was indeed injured. So that probably played a role in that decision as well. Personally, I wouldn't have been mad about a 1-2 game suspension just for the optics of it. But I don't think it was as egregious as people were making it out to be. Certainly not on the same level as Tyler Bertuzzi and Steve Moore, as was out there. And in the end, Taylor Hall, $5,000 lighter in the wallet, will be in the lineup for tonight's game against his old team, the New Jersey Devils, with whom he won the Hart Trophy a few years ago. So good news for the Bruins for sure. Also, caught a lot of flack on Twitter yesterday for saying the Leaf fan from Alberta who looks like he lives in a pro shop posted that video saying he hates Boston. I said it was embarrassing, or more embarrassing than the Taylor Hall guy. Got a lot of flack for that. Shouldn't have framed it like that, I suppose. I apologize to the guy on Twitter. We worked it out. And, always a reminder that you never know what people are going through, to be careful with words on social media. That was a good reminder for me. I'm not typically someone who tries to bully people, having been bullied myself in the past. Just trying to keep it light, keep it positive. So that was regrettable. But at the end of the day, he wasn't sweating it. Probably I shouldn't have either. And we all worked it out. Building bridges, not walls, here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I hope you're all having a great week. And again, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about tonight's game. Bruins honoring Tuukka Rask prior to puck drop. Everybody tune in. Everybody going to the game. Cheer as loud as you can for Tuukka. He deserves it. Deserves all the love. The fact that he is not universally beloved by Bruins fans, disappointing. We're all disappointed that they didn't win in 2019, didn't win in 2013, but you can't pin it on him solely. If we look at his numbers, he was as good as anybody over the last 15 years. Certainly belongs in the Hockey Hall of Fame, I believe, as well as his number retired from the TD Garden rafters at some point. So thank you, Tuukka, for everything. Hope you feel the love tonight. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.